After 50. The biggest mistakes in dating don't look dangerous at all. In fact, they feel right, comforting, even exciting. And that's exactly why they cost you the most. I learned that the hard way. I met him at 54, a simple introduction, nothing dramatic. But what stayed with me wasn't who he was, it was how he made me feel. Seen. He listened, remembered small things, paid attention. And after years of being on my own, that kind of attention felt rare, almost too good. We started talking more, calls became daily, conversations got longer. And slowly I started looking forward to it. Not just him, but the feeling, that warm, familiar sense of being wanted again. At that time, I didn't question it. Why would I? It felt right. But looking back now, this is where so many women get it wrong after 50. Not because they don't know better, but because the mistake doesn't feel like a mistake. I remember one evening, he canceled plans, last minute, nothing serious. But the way it affected me wasn't small. My whole mood shifted. That's when something inside me paused, because I saw it clearly for the first time. I wasn't attached to him. I was attached to how he made me feel. And that's where it starts. One small pattern, repeated daily, until you don't even realize how much you've given away. And once that happens, it becomes very hard to take it back. The second mistake feels very reasonable, almost mature. We'll adjust. That's what I told myself. Because at this age, you expect differences, different routines, different habits, different ways of living. So when I started noticing them, I didn't see them as problems. He liked things structured. I liked flexibility. He preferred staying in. I liked stepping out, even if it was just for a walk. Small things, easy to ignore. And honestly, I thought that's what compromise looks like. But here's what no one tells you. Not everything adjusts over time. Some things settle deeper. I remember one weekend clearly. I had planned to go out, nothing big, just a change of environment. He suggested we stay in instead. I hesitated, then agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't want friction. That one moment didn't matter, but it didn't stop there. It became a pattern. I adjusted again, then again, until one day I realized something uncomfortable. I was no longer choosing what I wanted. I was choosing what kept things smooth. And that difference changes everything. Because at this stage in life, you don't have the same energy to rebuild your peace. So losing it costs more. And looking back now, that was the second mistake I almost made. Not the differences themselves, but believing they wouldn't matter later. When in reality, those small mismatches quietly shape your everyday life. And once they become your routine, they're much harder to undo. The third mistake doesn't feel like a mistake either. It feels like honesty, opening up, sharing your story. And at this stage in life, it almost feels necessary. Because you've lived enough to have one. I did the same. Told him about my past, what I had been through, what hurt me, what shaped me. And he listened, carefully, which made it even easier to share more. But here's what I didn't realize then. There's a difference between connection and emotional exposure. I remember one conversation. I shared something deeply personal, something I hadn't told many people. He responded kindly, but later, in a completely unrelated moment, he used that same detail in a way that didn't feel right. Not cruel, but casual. And that stayed with me, because it made me pause, not at him, at myself. Why did I give that much that early? At this age, we think sharing builds closeness, but sometimes it creates a sense of connection that hasn't actually been earned yet. And that can be misleading, because you feel closer than you really are, more understood than you actually are. And that changes how you show up, how you trust, how you invest. And looking back now, that was the third mistake I almost made. Not being honest, but opening up too much before the connection was strong enough to hold it. And once that line is crossed, you can't take those pieces back. The fourth mistake is the one most women don't even realize they're making, because it doesn't feel like lowering standards. It feels like being understanding. At this stage in life, you don't expect perfection. You tell yourself, everyone has flaws. So when something feels slightly off, you explain it away. He doesn't call when he says he will. He's probably busy. He avoids certain conversations. He just needs time. He shows effort, but not consistently. At least he's trying. I did the same. Not because I didn't see it, but because I didn't want to overreact. After all, starting over after 50 isn't easy. And when something seems good enough, you don't want to risk losing it. I remember one moment clearly. I was waiting for a call. We had agreed on a time. He didn't call. Hours passed. No message, nothing. When he finally did, he acted like it was normal, and I accepted it. That's what stayed with me. Not what he did, but what I allowed, because deep down, I knew. If I had seen that same behavior years ago, I wouldn't have ignored it, but now I was. And that's when it became clear. This wasn't about him. It was about what I was willing to accept just to keep something going. And looking back now, that was the fourth mistake I almost made. Not choosing the wrong person, but adjusting my standards to fit what was available. And once you do that, you slowly start losing the version of yourself you worked hard to become. The fifth mistake doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly through small adjustments. Losing your independence. Not completely, just little pieces at a time. I didn't notice it in the beginning. It felt natural. Calling him before making plans, checking his availability before deciding my day, adjusting my routine to fit his. It didn't feel wrong. It felt like including someone in your life. But slowly, something shifted. My days started revolving around his schedule. My choices started depending on his presence. And without realizing it, my life was no longer fully mine. I remember one afternoon, a friend invited me out. I wanted to go, But before answering, I thought of him, whether he'd be free, whether it would affect our plans. And in that moment, I paused, because that hesitation wasn't there before. I used to decide freely. Now, I was considering someone else before myself. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just building a connection. I was reshaping my life around it. And at this age, that comes at a cost, because you've already built something that works for you. Your peace, your rhythm, your space. And when you start giving that up too easily, you don't notice what's slipping until it's already gone. And looking back now, that was the 5th mistake I almost made. Not loving someone, but slowly losing my own independence in the process. And once that happens, it's much harder to get yourself back than you think. The 6th and 7th mistakes were the ones that almost pulled everything together, because they work quietly, side by side, avoiding difficult conversations and ignoring your own intuition. I did both. At first, it felt easier. Why bring up something uncomfortable? Why risk tension when things are going fine? So I stayed quiet. When something didn't feel right, I told myself, it's too early to question things. When I felt unsure, I softened it, gave it time, hoped it would settle on its own. But it didn't. Instead, that quiet feeling stayed, not loud enough to act on, but strong enough to keep returning. I remember one evening clearly. We were sitting together. Everything looked normal, conversation flowing, no conflict. And yet, something inside me felt off. I couldn't explain it. Nothing was wrong, but nothing felt fully right either. That feeling is easy to ignore, especially after 50, because you don't want to overthink. You don't want to start over again. So you stay, you wait, you adjust. But here's what I learned. Your intuition doesn't shout, it repeats, softly, consistently, until you either listen or regret not listening. And those conversations you avoid, they don't disappear. They turn into distance. And looking back now, those were the last mistakes I almost made. Not asking what needed to be asked, and not trusting what I already felt. Because at this stage in life, peace doesn't come from avoiding truth. It comes from facing it early, before it costs you everything. If something here felt familiar, don't ignore it this time. And if this helped you see things a little clearer, consider liking and subscribing. It helps more than you think.